You are in the middle of a riot. Sirens are blaring, and a stranger is running directly at you. Their face is agitated, and their hand is gripping a dark, metallic object. You have less than a second to act. You raise your weapon and pull the trigger. In that fraction of a second, you feel an absolute conscious conviction. You believe you assessed the situation and independently authored the decision to shoot. Ancient Hindu philosophers identified this specific type of experience as pratibhasika. It is the first grade of reality, a subjective world constructed by flawed perception and projection. This illustrates the classic metaphor used in Advaita Vedanta to explain how pratibhasika works. You are walking down a dark path and see a coiled shape. Your mind projects the image of a deadly snake onto the object. Your heart rate spikes and your muscles tense as you react to a threat that only exists in your imagination. In reality, it is a piece of rope. The same mechanism governs the trigger pull. The metal glinting in the stranger's hand belonged to a cell phone, though your adrenaline-soaked mind registered a weapon. The feeling of absolute free will in the moment is an evolutionary illusion. It obscures the automated biological systems that are actually running the body. To find the actual cause of the trigger pull, we have to look at the second grade of reality, Vyavaharika. This is the empirical, physical world, governed by the laws of cause and effect. 1 second before you shoot, the amygdala, the brain's fear center, detects a threat and initiates an automatic chemical cascade. This signal bypasses the slower analytical frontal cortex and commands your finger to twitch. But the amygdala was already primed. Several hours before the riot, elevated testosterone and stress hormones were flooding your bloodstream. These chemicals physically biased your neural pathways, making you likely to interpret a neutral facial expression as hostile. Decades earlier, your brain was still forming. If you experienced severe trauma during adolescence, your frontal cortex physically atrophied. Its structure failed to mature, reducing your impulse control for the rest of your life. Before you were even born, maternal stress hormones crossing the placenta altered the activation of specific genes in your DNA. Your baseline threshold for anxiety was set in the womb, and those genes were inherited from nomadic pastoralists centuries ago, reaching back even further to the ancestors of all primates. The trigger pull isn't an isolated event. It is the terminal point of an unbroken chain of biological and environmental events stretching back to the emergence of our species. Our physical destiny and our reactions are largely written before we take our very first breath. No historical figure embodies this biological trap like the ancient Hindu sage Ashtavakra. According to legend, Ashtavakra corrected his father's recitation of the Vedas from inside the womb. His father, enraged by the correction, cursed him. The result is written into his name. Ashtavakra translates to 8 deformities. He was born crippled in 8 places. Shortly after, his father was defeated in a philosophical debate and drowned. Ashtavakra's body and his early limitations were entirely dictated by factors outside his control. This creates a dilemma. If the chemistry of our brains and the shape of our bodies write the script of our lives, then we are prisoners of our own biology. Despite his deformities, Ashtavakra became an intellectual giant. By age 10, he entered the court of King Janaka, outdebated the kingdom's greatest scholars, and secured his father's release. He achieved this by accessing the final grade of reality, paramarthika, the absolute reality of non-dual consciousness. He proposed that the conscious self exists apart from the mechanical processes of the body. This is the core of the Ashtavakra Gita. As shown here in Chapter 1, he identifies the self as the witness in all. His teaching focuses on shifting identity away from the acting ego. Most people attempt to gain freedom by controlling the machine, but you cannot dictate how your neurons fire or how your genes were coded. Ashtavakra identifies a second perspective, the act of observing. If you can map the deterministic gears of your own behavior, as we have just done, you are necessarily the thing standing outside those gears, watching them turn. This realization provides the logical bridge to his conclusion. When we recognize that our programming is an automated process, we stop identifying as the machine and become the observer. In that shift, we find the only freedom that was ever available.